Stories that we're going to be looking at today can still be classified under the missing 411, except there's one major difference, and that's the fact that they were actually found. But as you will see from the events from the time that they went missing to the time that they were found, can definitely be classified as bizarre. So hold on to your hats because we're jumping into another rabbit hole. Starting right off with our first story from 1898 about a 10-year-old boy named Wofford. The report that we have comes from the American Ethnology Annual Report. It says that he had been practicing archery near a river whenever he had looked over and decided that he was going to go catch some fish. And whenever he walked over and tried to start setting up a fish trap just out of stones, a stranger appears out of the woods and tells him that he looks tired and should come with him to have dinner back at his house. Upon looking, Wofford just thinks this is a normal person. Yeah, sure, why not? And goes with him, completely forgetting about stranger danger, but this was the 1800s, I guess. So with Wofford not being too suspicious, he goes with the stranger back to his house, and he finds the home full of people having a good time, laughing, and kids running around playing, everybody being super friendly, trying to make him feel welcome. And even a family friend shows up, and it makes him feel a lot more comforted to know that he actually knows somebody here at this party. So after eating food, playing all night, he actually falls asleep in this house instead of going home like he probably should have. Upon waking up, he realizes his family's probably going to be worried he needs to be making his way back home, and the same stranger that invited him to this house decided to walk him back part of the way to his home. Upon leaving, Wofford actually begins to describe that there was an orchard on one side of the house and a cornfield on another, and they followed a path up the way in front of the house to where it came to a fork in the path, and the stranger told him, just continue straight on, you'll hit the river, you'll go over a bridge, and then you'll be right at home. Then the stranger just slips off into the woods, and as Wofford begins to follow the instructions, he continues up the path, of course wanting to turn around and thank the stranger, but upon turning around, he sees that there is no stranger. In fact, there's no cornfield, there's no orchard, there's not even a path behind him. He begins to really look around and sees that everything around him is just thicket and woods. Luckily, he continues straight in the same direction that he had started and finds his way through the underbrush. He then stumbles on a group of people who had been frantically looking for him, and one of those people was actually the same family friend that had apparently been at the party from the night before. And of course, whenever he goes to ask this friend, where did the house go? Where have you been? The friend looks at him and says, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't been to any party. We've all been searching for you this entire time. And from that point on, anybody that Wofford told this story to, they would all reassure him, there's no house out that way. Many of these same people that heard the story would go on to tell Wofford and anybody else that he probably saw what is referred to as the Noonie, the people who live anywhere. It's a race of supernatural creatures from Cherokee mythology that would have been in the same area that Wofford went missing. Of course, just making this story that much harder to figure out exactly what happened. Now, as I said, this story technically falls under one of the missing 411 categories, which you may be more familiar with unsolved mysteries or just odd disappearances that you hear about. For me, it wasn't until recently whenever I watched one of Wendigoon's videos and I actually saw him explain what missing 411 is, which if you don't know, 411 just stands for information, so this is just missing information. And as he was explaining some of his favorite cases that he has come across, this of course led me down the rabbit hole to wanting to look into all of these and figure out exactly who David Pollards is. And I can tell you that is just the very top of this rabbit hole. There's no telling how deep any of this goes or where it would lead, and there's so many different categories and sections that of course I just wanted to share with y'all some of the ones that I thought were really interesting because these people were found and do have their own side to the stories. Like our next story that happened in 2012, this one here caught my attention because it did happen in Arkansas and in an area that I've been to, but we'll come back to that. On September 22nd of 2012, the 53 23-year-old Linda Ortega was out hiking in the Ozark forest with her older brother, who was 56 at the time, Eddie Huff. Although her brother returned and claimed to have seen his sister off at a relative's house, in reality, she was nowhere to be found. And upon realizing that she had been missing, there was a huge search party that was launched, and luckily she was found that same day. But all of the circumstances surrounding her disappearance, as you will see, are just incredibly bizarre. Whenever she began to be questioned on exactly what happened, she couldn't remember how she had went missing or when she had went missing. She did think that for some reason her brother had been hurt and that she was trying to find help for him. And whenever she was running back down the trail to find help for her brother, everybody she came across, all the other hikers, she couldn't communicate with them. Anytime that she tried to speak with them, it was as though they couldn't hear. It was as though that they couldn't even see her there. Then she kept mentioning that there were weird people hiding in the bushes nearby. Everywhere that she went, she kept seeing these, quote, weird people, very weird people. One of the searchers who found her was actually a deputy of the local sheriff's department. He actually said that she definitely seemed to be outside of her mind, and he, as well as a few other of the police officers on the scene, just came to the conclusion that she must have ingested some hallucinogenic berries. But there still seems to be something that's really unclear going on here about her brother dropping her off, but she's still lost somehow. Where did she get lost? Where did the separation happen? There's a lot of weirdness that's going on here, and I'll have to leave it with you to decide exactly what happened. Another thing that led me down wanting to talk about this was finding this picture on Facebook, and of course making me feel quite weird because here recently I got lost up in the mountains near that part of Arkansas. And here's a little bit of me freaking out about what happened because I didn't know where I was or what was going on.
How did I even end up out here on a mountain somewhere? Nowhere close to where I'm going. Like, my map updated a while ago saying that I was like another hour away from the destination it was taking me. I'm assuming I'm still in Arkansas. I don't know. This is, to me, just the Twilight Zone. My like 35-minute drive is now almost at 2 hours long. But look at that. That's nice. It looks so similar to where I was. Oh, I'm so confused. I just tried to call somebody. It like went through for a second. And of course, I'll call you back. I don't know if my signal's gonna like, I guess there are some people still out there.
It ended up taking me about 3.5 hours. Part of this, of course, was from my maps on my phone just leading me in the wrong direction, up and over basically 2 mountains. But I could have swore it led me through a town that, after looking up where this town was in Arkansas, is nowhere near where I was. I don't know what happened. All I know is that it took me forever to get there. Whenever I finally did arrive at this park, they told me, yeah, that happens sometimes. And I know how crazy that sounds, and I'm just leaving it out there for you to deal with. I don't know what to think about it. I just know what happened. And that's the same attitude that this next family has with our next story. Now, you'll need to prepare yourself because even David Politz considers this one of the wildest stories that he's ever come across. Especially because the entire family, after all this time has passed, still reassures him and everybody else that this is exactly what happened. Nobody has strayed from any of the facts, and everything seems to line up together. This boy, who we'll call John from here on out, went missing on October 1st, 2010 at around 6:30 p.m. along a popular fly fishing river near Mount Shasta in California. Of course, shortly after his disappearance, all of the authorities showed up and began to conduct a search party. They luckily found him 5 hours later standing in a small grove of trees, being very dazed and confused about what had happened and where he had been. Whenever he finally did come around, the story that he had to tell them was, well, you'll see. According to John, he had been taken by a woman who he assumed was his grandmother deep into a cave. Once he found himself in the bottom of this cave, he found himself in a big cold room full of what seemed to be human-looking robots, all standing around in various positions, motionless, as well as a lot of guns and weapons that were also just scattered around along with them. Not to mention giant spiders that were also skittering around in the dark. And it was at this point that the boy looked up and realized that his grandmother was emitting a light from her own head, revealing to him that she also was some sort of robot. The Grandmother at this point ordered John to defecate on a piece of paper, and of course whenever he refused, began to get agitated, then revealing to him that he too was from outer space and was planted in his mother's womb. Shortly after this, the boy was taken back up to the surface and told to stand in the group of trees until he was found. Now I know that sounds wild, but it gets even weirder. After John began to tell this story, his grandmother then also confessed that a year before she had been camping here and had been taken from her tent and deposited a short distance away from her tent. Whenever she had finally woken up, she felt a pain in the base of her neck, and upon feeling, she discovered that she had 2 puncture marks surrounded by red skin there. Grandmother, of course, had no idea if this had anything to do with her grandson's tale, but altogether it definitely seems really weird. And so many of these I don't know what to think about. I think that's what's really intriguing about them, and I'm sure you're the same way. If you have any weird stories that you've heard or that you come across, send them over to me. I would love to read them and make a video with them. And here's a hand so you'll be able to start climbing out of this rabbit hole so you'll be ready to jump into the next one with me. And with all that being said, just remember that these are my odd thoughts on some odd facts about a very odd topic. And if you liked the video, be sure to leave a like on the video and make sure to subscribe so you get more videos just like this one. And if you made it to the end of the video, I thank you very much. Have an extra blessed day, and I will see y'all next time.